Cassette Podcast Network. Welcome, Amanda. It's great to have you here today. Amanda is an ICU nurse and she is married to a police officer, and so we are delighted to have her here today to share her experiences so that we can learn from what it's like to be a family member of a first responder and really a frontline worker yourself. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So as we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Yeah, so I'm 44 years old. I'm an ICU nurse, as you mentioned. I've been in the ICU for 19 of my 20 years in nursing. Married to my husband, who is a police officer. He's been an officer for about 5 years now. So I was there for his academy and also, starting out in that career and for the events that have happened during his career so far. We do have two kids, a 17-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl who've been navigating distance learning for the last 12 months during this pandemic. So we've both, been on the front lines for the last year and have had some unique challenges as a result of that.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how has COVID really affected you all as frontline workers in this past year and your family life?
It's been life-changing. It's been career-changing for myself personally. It's forever changed my practice and my focus, and it's carried over in a major way to our family life. It's hard not to bring work home when we're dealing with such a huge global issue and something that directly affects healthcare as it does. And me being in the ICU where we dealt with the sickest of the sick COVIDs, and I exclusively cared for COVID for about 11 and a half months. So that was all I was dealing with. And then, managing, worrying about the kids being at home, distance learning, and our shift work. And at the same time during the pandemic, we had a major event in Minneapolis, with George Floyd's murder and the subsequent fallout for police officers. So during a time when we really needed to rely on our public safety officers and our healthcare workers, it was a time of a lot of questioning and a lot of mixed feelings.
Yeah, I mean, when you take a moment to reflect and pause on this past year, I mean, I think you said it so well, right? Like, it's life-changing. But for those who have been on the front lines, like for me, I have not. I've been working here at home in my office. So what has it been like for you to be on the front line?
I am someone who went into it with a lot of great coping skills that I had built up over the years. And it really challenged me, even with those healthy coping skills that I had to pull from, and even with a strong faith that I had to pull from. I did find myself paralyzed often by anxiety and by fear, and especially in the beginning with the uncertainties of, not having the knowledge and the time to really pull together how to combat this, how this was spreading. It was very overwhelming. I would say the feeling was overwhelming. And then to try to educate my family home, not only my children, but my extended family, about the risks without spreading the fear that I was feeling, without giving that to them, but also informing them so they can make the right decisions and do the right things to protect themselves and their community. That was a unique challenge to try to balance. I need to tell them, but I need to not make them overwhelmed also.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine kind of walking through this year in your shoes, the way that kind of Heather said it, but also just, I don't remember a year that we've had in the world, but especially our country, that was as difficult as this one, with so much going on, especially in regards to first responders, folks in the hospital, in the health industry, policemen, people who work on the police force, stuff like that, right? And and the fact that everything got so politicized. So it didn't just affect like occupational, like it had an effect on our personal relationships with everybody. Like you didn't know what people were believing, what they were thinking. So it's almost like, I got to imagine it. Did it feel difficult to have like a safe person to really talk to about what was going on, or it seems like it would almost feel like you had to just carry it all yourself in a sense, just because of everything that was happening at once.
Right. Yeah, it really did show me people's natures that I maybe didn't realize, or that I maybe casual acquaintances with and didn't really know where they stood on issues or how much education they had. It really clarified for me. There were people who told me I was lying about what I was sharing, that it wasn't real, that it was a hoax, and that it was, a man-made thing, and that it was a very political thing. It didn't feel very political as I was caring for these people in the ICU. It felt like a human issue. I did lose some people, and I did have to, for my own sanity, for my own well-being emotionally, stop contact with some people during this time. It felt better, safer for me, and I really had to be careful also who I expressed my feelings with and my, frustrations with. Some were very willing to listen and checked in on me that I didn't expect, and others just kind of couldn't handle it in their own stress and their own experience. It was too much to hear what was going on with me, so I had to, sort of feel it out with people a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned having to rely on coping skills that you had developed in the 20 years in the field. Can you share what were some of those coping skills that you used to get through this? I think mentioning, setting boundaries with people was really important this year, probably more than it's been. And I think people learn that. A lot of people learn like, oh, that's actually a good coping skill that we need, right? But what are some other ones that you had to rely on to help get you through a year like this?
Thankfully, I had been practicing meditation for a few years prior to this, and even when this started, I did have a harder time having that sort of moment where I could meditate, where I could slow my heart enough and my breathing enough to really be in the moment, to be present with it. So it was a skill I was so grateful that I had been practicing, and I didn't beat myself up if I got distracted during it. I just that was the whole idea. I could refocus. And that helped me when I was dealing with, a very stressful thing on the job. I could have that moment of I'm going to take a deep breath and center myself. So meditation was huge for me. I have a strong faith in God, so I pulled from my faith oftentimes. Exercise is an outlet for me and a physical release for me, and I had to lean on exercise. Now, my happy place used to be in the gym, and so I didn't have the gym to go to anymore. I didn't feel that I was safe to go to a gym and expose other people potentially, or to be exposed. So I had to build up my own home gym and get creative and, use different workout routines and but it helped to have that physical outlet. And also anytime I could spend in nature. So we, like many people, started a little quarantine garden and, did some planting, and we definitely didn't do a great garden, but we learned, and that process of watching things grow and life renewing during the spring, as it was when this started, was helpful, just to watch those sort of cycles of nature. Like it was winter, things were dead, but now things are coming back, and just like stressful events, they cycle in and out. I know it won't last forever, so I'm going to hold on for that spring that's coming. So having those connections with nature and sort of that cycle of things helped me as well. And also to be able to talk about it, share about it, and that was frequently with other people experiencing the same things. There's a certain culture in nursing that you don't let it get to you, and that you got to be tough as nails and let things bounce off of you. So those weren't the people I sought out to talk to. It was the people that I saw struggling, that I knew were ready to share about it, and those were the people I would seek out and talk to, and I would listen to, and then share with them that I was feeling the same things, because it felt so much less isolating to have someone that would share how they really felt, how it was really affecting them.
So much of what we've been talking about on this podcast with Trudy really has been on awareness, right? Which you're building in your meditation practice. And so, it makes sense that, coming back to the moment, how supportive and helpful that's been for you. There's a great neuroscientist, Dr. Judson Brewer, and he talks about how fear plus uncertainty equals anxiety. So when you think about this past year and what we've been living in, it's really a recipe for anxiety. And so he talks about how when we don't have enough information to plan, how difficult that is on our brain. And so it's like coming back to the moment and taking it one moment at a time, one day at a time, whatever period of time we can plan for, how helpful that is for decreasing our anxiety. And that's really what I heard you articulate there. I am curious, as you've navigated distance learning and shift work, really, how do you manage your day-to-day life with your family and your kids? What does that look like for you all?
Oh, we're very routine. We have set bedtimes, get up times, times when we know school's in session, after school, time we set aside for homework. We keep a routine going. My schedules, I keep the same, so I try to work the same set of days in a row each week so that it's less disruptive to try to figure out when I'm going to be available and not available. My husband, unfortunately, doesn't have that ability, so his shifts can change, his days can change, and so that's a little less, certain and stable. But I'm kind of that stable one in the home where I'm going to be there certain days and times and available. And we try to also have whenever we can, have a dinner where we sit together and talk and sort of talk about the day. And what I started early in the pandemic was gratitude is another coping mechanism for me. It's a big one. And I started asking everyone at the table, name 5 things today that you're grateful for. And so that kind of helped shift their focus to, what really worked well that day, even if it was something little like, oh, I didn't have much homework, or I got to see this video that it was really interesting, or, we would share and have sort of that family time. So that's been helpful. And they kind of knew I tried not to talk about work so much when it was kind of us time. We started a little book club, so the kids and I were reading a series of books together, and that was something positive we could do together that was completely in our imaginations and off topic of the pandemic and everything we were going through. So that distraction helped a lot.
Mm-hmm. As you talk about these self-care and coping strategies, it sounds like you're really a pillar of strength for your family. And so I'm curious how your coping strategies and self-care strategies, help you to show up for your family.
Right, and in really big ways. That resilience that I've built over the years, it was really tested this last year. It was really tested when my husband had, traumatic events happen at work. It was really tested around the Black Lives Matter movement, of sort of the fallout of it for police officers, and it was tested with my career. And I had really just hoped that I could be an example. Mom's working out again, mom's meditating again, mom's, talking about things and focusing on gratitude. And I wanted to be that example to them. Hey, this has helped me. It could maybe help you if you give it a try, try to have that positive influence. And in the way I was raised, my mom was sort of that pillar of strength and stability, in the chaos. And so I think that example was shown to me, and hopefully I then pass that along to my kids.
I love that, especially talking about that idea of modeling resiliency and reinforcing the practices, though, getting your family to talk about what they're grateful for. I don't think we place enough importance as a culture or society on the importance of kind of our mindset, especially in a year like this, to where you couldn't look anywhere without seeing, really terrible things happening. And so it was really hard to find some positive things. And we forget sometimes because our goal is just to like make it through it and get back to normal. But the muscle, the gratitude muscle from working out, those things in a year like this, how helpful it's going to be, not just for folks who have made it through that way, but also for kids who have seen that. And I just think that's such a huge advantage, giving your kids that ability to kind of shift their mindset in a year like this. It's phenomenal. How does that work with, we've talked about your husband having a job that's just as we've talked about to another spouse of a police officer, and even just kind of the stigma of it, and when talking about your kids, how do you teach them or have you guys had that conversation? Has that come into the conversation of how to be okay with what dad's role is, or how to navigate when people are saying some of the things they're saying, and putting, their parental figure into this light or whatever? Have you guys had to process that with your kids about how to navigate those kind of conversations with people outside?
Well, thankfully, they haven't been approached about it. They have a small circle of friends that, but we have talked about it, and we've been very open and willing to answer questions about it. So say, for instance, when George Floyd was murdered, it was a conversation we had, like, wow, that really shouldn't have happened, and that police officer didn't do the right thing. That accountability and that, like, acknowledging that wasn't an okay thing that happened, and some of these other incidents have been happening that aren't okay. And we don't have a all or nothing approach. Like, we're not going to say all police are good and all police are bad. We want to be very honest and open that people make mistakes, and people in power often make mistakes, and that things need to change. And so we did talk a little bit about, how my husband handles work, and what their policies they have in place to help avoid something like that from happening, and the training that they go through, so that our kids can honor what he does, but also not blanket it as, well, the police officer was doing their job. Like, really looking at both sides and really trying to understand, and not be, all back the blue and all Black Lives Matter. Like, finding some middle ground, finding that place where we all hopefully should be, where we're seeking to understand and to learn and to grow.
That's good. I think that's such a good point too, because we're so disconnected, and not to make it all about political and the culture. We can get back to the things that are really important too, but just that reality of it has become so disconnected that you're either or. And so teaching kind of that positive side and how to navigate that, I think, is such a valuable tool, especially passing on to our kids.
Well, and I don't think it's even off topic, really, because it's so much of, I would imagine it's having an impact on your family in this past year as well, because of the heightened stress that it brings to your family.
Right. For me, especially worrying about my own physical safety, health-wise, my children's safety, health-wise, and then our physical safety as a potential target for people who are upset with the police and who may want to seek out, where they live and harm them. We saw some of it happen this year, and we've seen that happen in our town several years ago, where police officers were targeted and killed. We lost 2 officers several years ago in that way, and in 2019, my husband was involved in a traumatic event where someone lost their life as a result of lethal force. So that was his traumatic event that triggered a lot of his PTSD, and and that happened to be a person of color as well that died. And so there was a lot of fear over, will this how will this be portrayed to the media? How will the investigation go? Will there be any fault found? Will we then be targets of harm? So there's been a lot of that fear going into it, and then exacerbated by the large movement that I'm so on the fence with, because I so feel the Black Lives Matter movement and sort of this awareness needs to happen. It's a valuable, important thing. But I also am a person who believes in peace protest and believes that we all need to be a part of the change, but I don't necessarily see how violence helps that, or how targeting someone who wasn't involved in the situation can help that. And so I really try to find the balance, like something needs to happen, and it needs to be big, and it needs to make a statement, but I also want to feel safe, like it's going to be, like it's being handled in a way that protects us as a community.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, just, with everything that you've shared today, what do you think is a way forward for really understanding the and, right? We have either or, but how do we move forward with the and from your perspective, since you're sitting at the front line?
Listening to understand, informing ourselves, arming ourselves with facts and information, and really turning off the rumor mill and turning off the panic that gets spread on social media, and seeking to listen to the other side. So like talking with people that have had experiences, or even our friends of color, and kind of understanding where they're coming from, and really listening, seeking to understand, and having an open mind. Okay, maybe I don't have the right view of this, or maybe I do, but I'm going to seek more information to really make an informed decision about this. I feel like that is so vital. Once we form an opinion and we sort of turn off everyone's voice, then we're not helping ourselves to understand, and we're not part of the solution.
Thank you. It strikes me, your family, you've been through a tremendous amount, and we talk a lot about resilience on this podcast. So I'm curious, would you categorize your family as resilient, and in what ways?
Right, so I was thinking about this, and I was very surprised at the resilience of my children. Having both of us on the front line, worrying about my husband's safety when he goes to work, worrying about my safety and, whether I'm going to get sick or one of them will get sick, and navigating distance learning and not being around their social circles. And I especially did not allow them around the social circles, and I didn't feel that was a responsible way to handle it. So they were really kind of isolated. So I found that they thrived with distance education. Their grades were better than they had been. They seemed to be even more responsible as far as like getting themselves up and ready for school, logging on time. I didn't have to hover. I did hover for the first couple of weeks just to be sure that things were going to go smoothly, but I found I didn't even need to do that. They picked right up and got going. Now, they weren't doing meditation, and they weren't, hitting my little garage gym with me and doing those things, but they really seemed to have that resilience and that adaptability. They were like, okay, well, this is how it's going now, so I'm going to jump into this. But I'll have to say that's not been the experience that I've heard from my colleagues and in the community. They've really struggled, and their kids have really struggled. And so I don't know to what extent my influence has had on that resilience, that adaptability, but I hope it helped, because they really have done a fantastic job. My husband, I don't feel is as resilient. He didn't come into our family with those sort of healthy coping mechanisms and strategies, and I find that he resists them a little bit. So like he kind of probably knows things that might keep him on a more balanced, but doesn't practice them. And so I try not to push those things on him, but to still sort of exemplify it for him. But he's at least going to counseling. That's been a large one that I used for my son especially. I put, he's been in and out of counseling, and when the pandemic started, I made sure he had an appointment and was able to talk to a third person, someone outside of our family about it virtually. And my husband's been going to counseling, which is a huge step for him, so that helps that he has that outside person to kind of talk to as well. So those things have helped and our resilience.
It always amazes me at how helpful these coping skills are for resiliency and how important they are, but how almost, I'm not trying to think of the right word, but they're almost stigmatized, and there's almost a view towards them. So they're not as like normal. It's more normal, whatever that means, or typical to not use any coping skills, because that's kind of our, pick yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. And it's just hearing you talk about, how helpful they were, even though things were really difficult, right? And things were still difficult, but these kind of helped keep it at a manageable level, right? And it just always amazes me how, as a society, but especially in, we've talked to folks in the fire department and police department, how almost stigmatizing it is to use some of these really helpful things.
Very. And I was one of those people that really didn't want to seek help. That was a sign of weakness. I was raised to keep it to myself, and like you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you don't ask for help. And these new agey things like meditation always seem so foreign to me, and like that doesn't really help, and that's not going to help me. And a lot of nurses have that same mentality too, and police officers, first responders, like I just got to be tough. I just got to, keep going. This is my job. I'm just going to. So when I got into a lot of trouble with that. I didn't have healthy coping. I got into a lot of unhealthy things that I was leaning on, especially, in the first decade and a half of my practice. Like I was leaning on things that were killing me, that were making my life unmanageable. And so once I really started to practice it and do it, now I just shout it from the rooftops. If I see someone struggling, I'm like, hey, this helps me. Why don't you try this? And I try to share that, and I try to talk about it, and I try to, help with that stigma at work by saying, well, this is really hard on me too. I know how I know how you're feeling, like really acknowledging it in other people. And my husband has sought out, people in the police force who've had similar experiences as the shooting he was in on, that they actually had experience in this area, and he would go to coffee with them and talk to them about, how it was for them and what's helping them and what, and I had to tell him to avoid those people that wanted to insert their opinion that sort of didn't have that background of understanding. And the same with me at work, avoiding those people that sort of don't help that culture that we're trying to, encourage, of sharing, of being honest about how we really feel. You see a lot of police officers lost to suicide, and that's, they're not comfortable asking for help. They're not comfortable saying that they've got a problem and they're really struggling. And I lost a nurse colleague about 3 months ago to suicide. And it was someone that wasn't sharing about how difficult things were, and we didn't know, how they were struggling. And that's really hard when there is help out there, and there is a network of kind of people that, that can help you process and make it valid for you. Like just listening to other people's shares, even if I didn't speak with them about the pandemic, if I'd watch an interview with a nurse and what they shared, it was so helpful to me. It felt less isolating, and it felt like, wow, I'm not alone in this. Other people are struggling, and that's okay that we're struggling. This is hard, and giving ourselves that grace that, yeah, this is really hard. I'm probably going to need some help with this and some time with this.
Yeah, the importance of acknowledging things as they are. Yet it's so challenging for us to do, especially in this culture where it is, like pull yourself up, everything's fine. And then what that does to us on the inside, it just rips people apart. I'm struck by also the importance of connection and the ability to, have these important social connections where it sounds like you can really just be real. That's what you're looking for. Like, how can I be real and be met without judgment of others? And how supportive that's been for you.
Right. I did have a lot of people have reached out during my husband's incident. People, reached out to him and like offered, hey, let's go talk. Or let's hang out. And for me, I had people sending me cards and just checking in. Just, hi, how are you doing? I was thinking about you today, and I'm praying for you. And I have a wonderful friend who taught me something really important. She once asked me, how can I best love you through this? How can I best support you through this? And just asking that question, it's like, oh, yeah, I can tell you how I feel most supported. And if you're willing to do that, that's such an amazing gift, So I try to do that with people when I see them going through something tough now. I do that as well. I ask them, how can I best support you? What feels like support to you? And I do that with my kids too. What do you need right now? What would help you?
This is so interesting to me, and I have so many questions. We could do another couple hours if you have time. We won't. I'm just teasing.
I know.
And what I'm really curious, because you've seen, experienced multiple sides of this, of not necessarily the way you talked about using the best coping mechanisms and developing those and relying on those, but how those were really challenged this year. And then also have seen people who didn't have that support and kind of suffered silently. If you could give some advice to folks that are listening, whether they're family members or first responders, what's some things that you would tell them if they are struggling or if they are having a difficult time finding that support?
Right. First, know that you're not alone in this, and that there's other people out there. Maybe their circumstances are different than yours, but there's a common thread there of that suffering, of that anxiety, of that feeling like it's not going to get better, that overwhelming feeling, the hopeless feeling. You're definitely not alone. It's a season in your life. I've seen a lot of really difficult seasons come and go, and so I always know to hang on to the positive and to know that it's going to get better, and know that the bad can't last forever. And I would share with them that gratitude has shifted my focus to focusing on the things that are going right in my life and the little joys that I can find in each and every situation. And I would tell them to find their people. And so their people are those that support them, encourage them, listen to them, want to understand, can sometimes just sit in silence, and listening can sometimes be the biggest gift. The fact that they're willing to just take in what you have to share and what you need to vent about. You don't need a huge network of people. You just need a few in your circle that are your people that you can lean on. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I found that, I didn't need to lean on those unhealthy coping mechanisms that I had lent on. I didn't need drugs or alcohol or other destructive things in my life. I could reach out and say, I don't know how to handle this. Do you have any suggestions? Going to counseling. And if your counselor that you tried that one time didn't work out, keep trying. Find a different one. Change your counselor until you find one that you feel like is benefiting you and helping you. It's not a try meditation one time, and if it doesn't feel great, then you don't do it anymore. It's a practice, as they say. So these coping mechanisms, they feel awkward and unnatural at first, and practicing them over and over, you get to the point where you feel more comfortable, and then you feel more open. And the more you talk to people, the more open you feel, and the less stigma you even care about, because you're like, this is authentically me and how I feel, and I can be myself, whether people accept it or not. I accept me, and I feel more comfortable that I'm being true to myself.
Oh, that's so helpful, I think, for people as they're going through and navigating these really stressful waters of being a family of a first responder, and then to have two in the same family. So thank you for sharing all of your insights from your journey. And I would imagine you would agree it's a journey too, and that it's not just like, okay, we do this and now it's fixed. It's really a process that happens over time and a practice, as you said.
Yes, yeah, it is a practice, and it's a muscle that does get stronger. And so then we learn that we can navigate whatever is coming next.
As we begin to wrap up here, we often talk with folks about resources. And so I'm curious, have there been any resources that you found? I mean, you've talked about these coping strategies and these practices, but any resources that has been available to you that you've just found super helpful?
Counseling is a resource that I have found helpful. Also, following a community of people dealing with the same kind of thing. So in my nursing practice, there was a community of nurses that was focused on the COVID epidemic, and we had a thread going on social media where people would put inspirational things, or this is how this worked for me, or this is what we're doing at work that seems to help this situation. Aligning yourself with other people that might be experiencing the thing. And there are, groups of spouses of police officers. I haven't found that as helpful for me, maybe because of my career and what I do, and that I sort of kind of feel like I need my own little support, So I haven't really meshed with any of those sort of spouse support groups. They just haven't worked for me, but there are those out there for firefighters and for police officer spouses to sort of, kind of gel with other people that are having similar maybe home life experiences and work-life balance or imbalance issues. And then I think, educating yourself is huge. I'm going to look into PTSD and trauma and what's where people and what resources are out there and what methods are out there, opening our minds to other things and seeking out those resources.
That's good. I love those strategies and the resources. And I think too, just to reiterate for those that are listening, and if you're struggling and it's really dark or difficult, it's okay to reach out. I think that's what we hear over and over again is making it okay to reach out and to find something and to try it until you find something that works for you. But we shouldn't, don't settle for suffering silently. And so I think there's help out there. Amanda, thank you so much for your story, for sharing with us. There's so much in this. I can't wait to hear the final. And if just kind of, I really think with the stories we're sharing and the journeys that people are sharing, I really do believe that there's going to be a lot of people that are affected in a positive way. So hopefully that gets back to us and we can get that to you as well. But we do appreciate you today. Thank you for your time and your story.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you so much.
Cassette Podcast Network. This podcast has been brought to you by the Cassette Podcast Network, located within the Center for the Application of Substance Abuse Technologies at the University of Nevada, Reno. For more podcast information and resources, visit cassette.org.